المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تنكحوا ما نكح آباؤكم من النساء إلا ما قد سلف إنه كان فاحشة ومقتا وساء سبيلا صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues with various subjects which are connected to the marital relationships. And as we mentioned earlier, that the practices of the Jahiliyyah and the inheriting of the women and the prevention of them from being able to utilize their resources independently, and that they and their resources and all their circumstances were actually controlled very predominantly by the menfolk. And we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His mercy had prohibited all these types of tyranny and oppression to the womenfolk. And also it was mentioned about you are not to inherit the women. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayat, before embarking on the detailed discussion on all of what we call the muharramat, all of the types of women which are prohibited from marriage. So here again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes this the abomination of this practice of the Jahiliyyah of inheriting of the women and marrying, as we mentioned yesterday, that the wives of fathers, once the father has died, so any of those children from other than that particular mother may marry that woman. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again reinforces that statement and that injunction. وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ, and do not marry those of the women that your fathers have married. So whether your father died while that woman was in the marital bind or was in wedlock, or whether that woman was a woman that your father had married and subsequently divorced. If she has ever been the wife of your father, she becomes muharram, she becomes forbidden, to the offspring of that man, regardless of whether he dies while he is in within the state of marriage or not. So this is the prohibition for that relationship. And as we mentioned earlier, that this is what would happen. The person would be calling and it's in the Arab custom, and it's in the probably custom of other civilizations as well, where you have polygamy. So if the father had 2 or 3 or 4 wives, so the children would call all of them their mothers. One of my friends from Saudi Arabia, he said, I actually had 4 mothers. So what do you mean? He said, my father had 4 wives, and we all lived in one big compound, and I had 50 brothers and sisters, and we were all one big happy family. So that's how in those societies, it's considered. So now after, the fellow was considering his father's wife as his mother and calls her as such, and then after he dies, then he goes ahead and marries her. So it's as though he's marrying his own mother. So obviously this is an abomination, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits such things. And of course, those practices have long since been done away with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not marry those whom your fathers have married, as we mentioned, whether they're in wedlock at the time of their death, or they have subsequently divorced them. إِلَّا مَا قَدْ سَلَفَ, except for that which has taken place previously. So it doesn't mean what took place previously, that's okay, you can carry on with that. No, it means that is an abomination, and it is something that you would be severely taken to task to. Now, what about those who did such previously, but subsequently now have left that practice? So that which took place before the injunction came down, that will be excused. But of course, if such a wedlock still remained at that particular time, at the time of the sending of this ayat, then that wedlock has to be obviously separated. And if so, then there wouldn't be, they would be held accounted for that. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَمَقْتًا. Verily, that type of relationship, marrying one's father's wife, who was something more or less your mother, that is obviously an abomination and a means of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger and wrath. وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. What a terrible way to go that is, or that would be. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and save us from all such abominations. Ameen.